So we are recording now.
We're
So
live.
hi, Grace. Hi, Gracie.
Hi, J-Ro.
Hi. Okay, so this is our conversations with the Juicy Crone, the Juicy Crone Nation. And I am on here with my friend Gracie. So we know each other from the community, and that would be the yoga community, the spiritual community, the mutual goddess community. So
Yes,
the
the
cosmic
recreational goddesses.
dance community, and I invited her on to participate in my project. And I'm sure if you guys have been watching the videos, you know what the question is. Grace knows what the question is, and she's been kind of thinking about it, sort of preparing about it. But I want to do a little intro of like why I'm doing this project. First of all, it's for you to know what you know. It's for you to like really get clear on what you know. And that's for everybody and anyone who's like watching these videos. Like, know what you know. Know what you know. It's also for you, Grace, to share your wisdom with the world. Like, we need wisdom out there. We need people speaking the truth. We need some truth talk. So this is for us to share our wisdom as Juicy Crones with the world. And to be a crone, you do not have to be a certain age chronologically or a certain sex. I just wanted to put that out there.
Chronologically.
Yes. Woo. So and then the third reason is because it's a beautiful experiment to have a conversation with your 20-year-old self, and then to time travel and go back and forgive your 20-year-old self for not knowing jack shit. Right?
Yep.
Just forgive
Amen.
yourself. So it's a beautiful opportunity to heal any regrets or unforgiveness that you might have for yourself. So that is my intro. And now, Grace, my darling friend, I'm just going to do the drum roll. What would you tell your 20-year-old self? Take it away.
Yeah. Woo! And this is a juicy one too, because I was reflecting on it when you had asked me to do it. I was reflecting on it, and my timeline from like I want to say 17 until 25 is super jam packed and also kind of fuzzy and muddled because I was at the time battling anorexia. So I was like in and out of treatment. So it kind of became this blur of like, was I in treatment? Like my entire timeline is basically, was I in treatment or was I not in treatment? So it was a very, very interesting and kind of pivotal moment in my life. So when I think back on my actual 20-year-old self, I can remember being in treatment in Tucson, Arizona, and spending my 20th birthday there, November. So it was in the fall. And I, at this point, had tried to begin college 2 times and went away to treatment and went back to college. And I remember being so distraught at my timeline. How could my timeline have gotten mixed up? How could my timeline have gotten so interrupted? I was supposed to graduate when I was a senior at 18 years old, go to a 4-year university, meet my best friends, meet my husband, and just have this amazingly beautiful life. So, plot twist, it was, I think, one of the biggest lessons that I would go back and tell that 20-year-old self who was like opening gifts that her family and friends had sent her at treatment, is forget about the timeline. Forget about checking off all of the shoulds that society has provided you that you should have at this pivotal moment, that you should have at this pivotal moment, that you should have accomplished or completed at this pivotal moment. And I think one of the biggest lessons for me, and actually ended up relating to a lot of friends from my graduating high school class, and then friends from all over, from the community of all different ages, is kind of this epiphany, this aha of, why aren't we talking about this? Why aren't we sharing our stories about how it didn't come out the way that we were told it should?
Right.
And I think that was the biggest aha for me to go back and tell my 20-year-old self, listen, you have time. You have time.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
period of your life, in comparison, let's just, you know, hope, pray, wish on a star, you make it till 90, right? This portion of your life is so minuscule in comparison to the full breadth of your life. So don't get so hung up on this. Well, if I go behind a semester, that's going to completely mess me up, and then I won't graduate when everyone from my high school graduating class graduated. Like, whoa, sister.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have all this time. So I think that was something too that even now, like I get caught up in, oh, I should have my licensed clinical social worker, you know, my license by now. I should have been licensed by now. But there were lots of snafus and I moved and all of these things came up and I did it. And I'm still returning to that 20-year-old self who lives within me still, saying, hey, girl, you've got time.
Yeah.
There is no time limit. And it was such a good lesson too, because my grandmother went back to school for her master's degree when she was 60 in teaching education. Yes. So, you know, it's so funny because that's even in my DNA, in my ancestry.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yes. So that is the first thing. And then the second thing, which has been a constant mantra for me and is for me still, it's actually a line from a Mumford and Sons song that I listened to a lot the year that I got diagnosed when I was in high school. And the line of the song is, in these bodies we will live, in these bodies we will die. Where you invest your love, you invest your life. And I just get like, I get chills even saying it.
Yes.
So it's kind of this acceptance of impermanence. In these bodies we will live, in these bodies we will die. So please don't attach yourself to how your body looks now, because guess what, sister, in 10 years, it's going to look a heck of a lot different. And in 10 years after that, a heck of a lot different. You know, aging is kind of Mother Nature's way of being like, hey, fuck you. Hey, you wanted to be beautiful forever? Oh, hey, you thought this is how it was going to be forever? Guess what? It's such a good check, you know, it's such a good check to get you back into what really matters, because guess what? It's going to happen whether or not you like it. And so to just kind of lean into that impermanence, and then where you invest your love, you invest your life. You know, I did so much when I was in that disordered mindset of counting calories, of over-exercising, of all these behaviors that really took up my entire mind, my entire psyche, all of my physical time. I didn't spend time with loved ones. I isolated myself from friends. I isolated myself from lovers. So it was like where I was investing my love, right? This sick, toxic, twisted relationship with my disorder, I invested my life. And it was, you know, when I look back at that time, you know, of my life, it's like, wow, the moments that I missed and the opportunities that I let go by because I was so fixated on this thought or this idea or these beliefs or kind of this perseveration on just negative self-talk, and essentially kind of like trying to end my own life in trying to, you know, deprive myself of nutrients and of vitality. And so that is still something that I constantly, as a mantra, where you invest your love, you invest your life. Where you invest your love, you invest your life. Where am I putting my time, my attention, and my love? Because there too, that's where my life's work. That's where you'll see reflected in your life's work. So,
So that's so interesting about, you know, I've been going back to some, first of all, I just want to say it's as hazy. If you spent your 20 years drugging and drinking, it's as fuzzy and as hazy as if you spent your 20s trying to kill yourself by not eating. It still is. So like when you're talking about like, I really can't remember what I was doing in my 20s. I thought you were going to be like in a drug haze. But
similar.
But it's
maybe that would have been a little more fun.
You of your sanity if you're in an addiction of food haze. It's still a type of addiction.
Yes,
so
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for people to try to, I don't know. So I think it's really useful to go on ahead and go back and like, oh yeah, that was an addiction. That was a full on mental illness addiction. And the reason
Yes.
I'm using mental illness, not to be dramatic, although I do like to be dramatic, you know, I got that Scorpio in me,
Yes.
but I've been thinking a lot about, so here's a follow-up question. As you went back and looked at yourself and your 20-year-old self, did you find any like little clunks where you wanted to regret or feel like you wasted time or where you had to like
Mhm.
actually apply
Mhm.
the self-forgiveness?
100%. And the self-forgiveness really came more in my relations to others.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about, the ways in which I had harmed my family,
Yeah.
because at a certain point, and this is something like as a social worker and as someone who's lived through an addiction, I have so much compassion for the fact that it is a disease and it is an illness. And I'm also in the camp of the thought, um, the camp of belief that once you have enough knowledge, no excuses. Once you have enough knowledge and you've been given tools
Mm-hmm.
to make different choices, you have to take them. And it's really about self-determination and self-efficacy and I understand too, there's a whole host of other intersectionality and factors. So, but if you are given enough resources and enough education, and you'll hear this from addicts all the time, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. And that's kind of how I felt, because at a certain point, I've been to treatment how many times? And I'm like, GRACIE, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Why? Come on now. Come on now. And so it wasn't easy. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying that, the no excuses as it's a totally easy thing. It is hard to get that rigorously honest with yourself.
It seems to me like what you're saying is, the way I'm reading is, you're not
Yeah.
saying what's the matter with you people if you're still in your illness? Can't
No,
just,
no.
you're saying choose life.
Yes.
Decide that you want to live,
Yes.
because the other way of living is a slow death, for sure.
Yes.
It's a slow death.
Yes.
So you're saying choose life. Maybe you don't, maybe people need tools, but really I think there's so much self-help stuff out there now that it's pretty
Yes.
available. You're
And
saying,
remember,
you're just saying, hey, do you want to live or not?
yeah. And remember, you have choice and you have power. So I think that, and it's different too, chemical dependency is another thing too. Your body craves something, but, which is also its own hurdle, right? But it's so interesting, because I explained this once to someone who had been, in recovery for drugs. And I explained to him, it's interesting because when you're in recovery from food addiction, or behaviors with starvation, eating disorder, basically what you have to do is you have to open up your cabinet in the morning and you have to look and say, okay, how much, it would be like if you asked an addict, how much is enough heroin to use today? Not too much, not too little, but just the right amount. And you, I'm sure, as someone who has an issue with this, can decide for yourself what that appropriate dose is, right? So it's similar with food, it's never going to be out of your life.
Yeah.
So it's this constant decision and moment, every single moment in your day, it's, oh, you're deathly afraid of the tiger? Well, guess what? You have to open up that cage 3 to 6 times a day and pet the tiger and have an intimate relationship with it. So I think that it's remembering, again, remembering that there is power and there is choice, and that you really do have more power than you think you do, and that choosing life. And I think that's what, and of course I always have compassion, because it's not easy. And again, you might get up and fall 80 times, but as long as that intention is still there to choose and to reclaim your power and to reclaim your autonomy in your own recovery, because that's so incredibly important. And you were saying about the forgiveness, I really had to forgive myself first for the ways in which I had let my disorder take precedence over my family, my loved ones, my friends, and then ask for their forgiveness for consciously or unconsciously choosing my disorder and those behaviors over my relationships. You know, the pain it caused my mother, the pain it caused my father, the pain it caused my sister, the pain it caused my relationships that I was in, my friends. And I think that was the final like wake up call for me was, hey, in 20 years, you may have no one in your corner. So you either, and everybody kind of talks about those turning points. So when, and those turning points are usually when you, in your mind, again, say, no excuses. And it's not this, oh, come on, just get over it. It's this mental fortitude of no more excuses. I have power. I have choice. I have autonomy. And with the support of my resources and my, you know, whatever supports I have, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this for me because it will trickle out into every relationship that I have in my future.
The reason, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being just upfront and vulnerable about the process that you've been through.
Yeah.
The reason I asked you about the forgiveness was that through this project, I have been like, of course, going back in time in my life, and I found a little sticky point. You know, I spent about 7 years agoraphobic, where I couldn't leave the house, and my whole family suffered from that. And now when I see my son with anxiety issues, I'm just like, oh my God, did I do that to him? You know, we're just kind of like an anxious family. And my disorder, it was a mental health issue.
Yeah.
And it was really this postpartum depression and anxiety. And it didn't have the depression component. So I never really got the help that I needed, because for those 7 years, I thought I could do it myself. And it wasn't until I had that pivotal moment where I saw that I was slowly dying. I mean, I was literally, so there's all these ways and forms that we kill ourselves. You know, yours looks totally different than my form, but the results are the same. We're slowly dying. And it wasn't until I had that pivotal moment where I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm going to die a miserable, lonely, closed off death, or I'm going to choose life. And and again, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
It takes that fortitude and that discipline and that determination. But I still find myself kind of going back like, well, why didn't I know earlier? Why didn't I, you know, I still am like regretting, like, why did I do that to myself for so long?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have the answers, because those are questions that there's no answers to.
Right.
The only answer is for me is that I'm willing to forgive myself, because over and over again, those kind of questions lead me to death. And I choose life.
Yes.
I choose life.
And and you know, that's a game I played with myself too, of why couldn't I have gotten better sooner? Why did it take me so long? What would my life have looked like if I had gotten, you know, if I had really made the change sooner? And it was one of those that my sister actually was the one who shared this quote with me, but the way it happened is the only way it could have happened. And I find so much solace in that, because it's basically like, the past is the past, bitch. So, you know, and it's one of those things that I take solace in that, because I can't tell you how many people in my life told me, well, why can't you just get over it? Well, why don't you just eat? Addicts. Well, why don't you just stop? Just stop drugs. Just stop doing that. And it's so harmful to hear those things, because you just want to scream, if I could, I would. I would have done it. And it's not until you do it that you do it.
Yep. Mine was like, well, why can't you just get in the car and drive down the road? Why can't you just go to the grocery store? Why can't we just go to the movies? Why can't we go to the theater? You know, so.
And therein lies the crux of mental illness. It is this cunning and baffling beast that everyone on the outside is going, well, why can't you just, and inside you're like, I'm trying.
Yeah.
So I really do think that it is. And that's why too, it's like, you know, it's so easy to sit on the other side and be like, well, you'll do it when you do it. But
Yeah.
that's really, it is the turning point that you have for yourself of, you know what? I have the knowledge. I know what to do. And now I'm doing it. And it's one of those things too that I had so many people in treatment tell me, you'll never feel ready. And there was one woman I'll never forget. She was in her early 40s, and we were in treatment together, and she looked at me and she said, please don't be sitting in my seat in 20 years. Try recovery for 3 months. That's all you have to do. 3 months, 90 days. And guess what? If you don't like it, if your life isn't better, you know how to be anorexic. Just go back. Just do it again. And it was like the most baffling thing to me, probably because I was also starved. So, you know, the brain isn't functioning. I'm not firing on all cylinders. But I was like, oh, well, yeah. And the perfectionist in me who like thrived off of that, you know, the eating disorder was kind of like this sick perfectionist game of like, how well can I do it? Like, how deeply can I start? So kind of the perfectionist in me was like, okay, yeah, oh, a challenge, a goal. Yeah, I will do it for 3 months. And it was one of those things though, that always kind of stuck with me, because after you hit usually that 90 days or those 3 months, you start to see those little changes of vitality and life, and you start to catch those glimpses. And it might not be the time that sticks, but eventually you put together enough days and you put together enough time, and you really do start to get those glimpses and those glimmers of, holy shit, what have I been doing? Like, there is so much life out here. There is so much, you know, to live. And it's not always, and again, recovery is not a linear process. That is not a straight line, but it is those glimpses and those moments. My uncle used to say, if you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, poke skylight. And he was like a long time alcoholic addict, and those, you know, those things, they matter. Yeah.
You know, which kind of brings me back to the first thing that you said you would tell your 20-year-old self, that there's time. There's no rush. There's no timeline. And it makes me think like I'm regretting the 7 years, but it could have been 7 months. It could have been 7 years. It could have been 7 lifetimes. Really doesn't matter, because we have this eternality. And it feels to me like when we can tap into the same quote that you were saying, in these bodies, we don't even live in these bodies. So when I can tap into the eternality, it's like, oh, it doesn't matter. 7 days, 7 years, 7 lifetimes. It doesn't matter. There's no time. There's no, life isn't a straight line. It's these zigzags.
Yeah. And you know, that's even kind of, I feel like where my recovery eventually progressed to is, you know, if you are a spiritual person or you kind of believe in divinity, or eternality, you kind of begin to think to yourself, why am I punishing this divine essence, this divine goddess, this divine spirit? Why am I punishing this divinity? Why am I punishing this beautiful, eternal life, you know? And so it's one of those things of like, when you, and I think too, the world, one of my favorite poems, The Wild Geese by Mary Oliver, it starts out, you do not have to be good. And it's so funny because I think we get caught up in this, you know, for me, I was raised Catholic, so I kind of had that whole, you're bad, whip your back, you're evil, you were born bad, whip your back. And so it's kind of this, when I really leaned into that, and it's so funny because my name is Grace. My name means, you know, unmerited favor and unconditional love. So it's like when I sit on that and meditate on that and think about that and really lean into my divinity, it's like, oh my God, what are you doing to this goddess? Like what, you know, what are you doing to this beautiful eternal being?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Grace, this has been so wonderful. I really appreciate it. And it's helped me, like just our conversation has helped me and has been healing for me. Is there, before we wrap up, is there any last thing that you would say to your 20-year-old self?
Grace.
Just Grace. Nice.
Grace.
Thank you so much. Thank you, my friend. Okay, so This is the Juicy Crone Nation signing off. Bye, everybody. Okay, so